The Auditor General today pointed to horrific waste. According to her, the government wasted at least $4.6 billion and another $27 billion, which she said were suspicious overpayments and should be investigated. There are 1,500 ineligible recipients. So why did the government waste money and create inflation on the backs of Canadians? The Honourable Minister of Revenue. Mr. Speaker, our government acted quickly to help Canadians during the pandemic, and we made the right choices. We would like to thank the Auditor General for her report and for her hard work, and we'd like to thank her for confirming that our COVID-19 benefits were targeted and effective. It is clearly indicated in the report that those benefits helped the economy get back on its feet, and Canadians know that we protected them, and we will continue to do that, Mr. Speaker. The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Is now exposed for having wasted massive sums over the last several years. According to the Auditor General, there is $4 billion of known waste, another $27 billion of suspected waste. There is $60 million of spending that's under criminal investigation. There were 190,000 people who quit their jobs and therefore were not eligible to receive the CERB benefit, but did anyway. They even sent the CERB to 1,500 prisoners, Mr. Speaker. Why did the government waste so much and make Canadians pay the price?
The Honourable Minister.
Mr. Speaker, the Auditor General found very clearly that CERB and our individual benefits achieved their intended goals of getting money to Canadians quickly, of allowing Canadians to stay home safely, and avoiding severe social and economic consequences. We as a Parliament approved an attestation-based approach. We knew from the beginning there would be post-payment verification. We are working methodically through that, Mr. Speaker, and I can assure all Canadians that we are on top of this.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Well, we already knew that the government paid billions of dollars in wage subsidies to profitable corporations that were able to pay out dividends to their wealthy executives. Now we know they also paid $15 billion to companies that did not have a significant revenue drop, and so they were able to pocket the cash at the expense of the Canadian people. Now, this is the same government that gave money to Loblaws, to other wealthy corporations, always at the expense of the working class. Why do they always take from the have-nots and give to the have-yachts?
The Honourable Minister. Mr. Speaker, our government made decisions that undoubtedly saved lives and the economy during the COVID-19 pandemic. Our agency has been working for months to check the eligibility of recipients, and the Auditor General concluded, what she concluded was in compliance is what the report said. The recovery will take years, and while the Conservatives are stuck with bad cryptocurrency advice from their leader, we are helping Canadians. Yes, but they're delivering for prisoners. The government gave CERB to 1,500 prisoners who were in prison after having committed crimes, so they clearly weren't eligible. 190,000 people received CERB who had left their jobs on purpose and who therefore were not eligible. We're talking about $30 billion of wasted money. And we know that there are criminal investigations underway. Will the government finally investigate to recover the money that was lost on the backs of Canadians? The Honourable Minister. Mr. Speaker, in an article by the CBC, the member for Edmonton West said that recovery is a process that can take many years. So here's my question, Mr. Speaker. Does his own leader agree with that member?
Mr. Speaker, the Auditor General stated that the process this government relied on to distribute COVID benefits led to $4.6 billion in overpayments to ineligible individuals and at least another $27 billion that needs to be investigated. So how much of this $32 billion can taxpayers expect to recover, and how much money is this government going to spend in administrative costs to recover money for taxpayers?
Good question.
The Honourable Minister of Employment.
The Parliament approved an approach that was attestation-based and then rigorous post-payment verification. As a result of that approach, Mr. Speaker, Canadians were able to put food on their table. Canadians remained attached to their job. We positioned our economy well to come roaring back at the end of the pandemic. It has. 117% of the jobs have been recovered, and our public health outcomes are the envy of the world.
The Honourable Member for Simcoe North. Mr. Speaker, the problem is the Auditor General said very clearly the post-payment verification process is anything but rigorous. The problem is taxpayers are now on the hook for these billions of dollars that they may never receive back. And this is the same failed process that the government is relying upon when distributing their new dental and rental benefits. So will the government admit that it had no controls and finally put some controls in place before they distribute any more government money?
The Honourable Minister.
That we are pursuing a very rigorous post-payment verification process based on best practice in the world of risk-based analysis. Mr. Speaker, we are taking a compassionate approach. We absolutely paused repayment during Omicron and other things that came up during the pandemic, but I can assure this House we are on top of it and we are following up.
Today, the Auditor General released a damning report confirming that Liberal mismanagement led to at least $32 billion in inflationary spending. More costs, no control. Their lack of transparency contributed to the affordability crisis. The Auditor General is deeply concerned by the lack of controls, and her report shows Liberals are only going to keep their failed approach for current and future programs. Why are Canadians continuously on the hook for Liberal failures?
The Honourable Minister of Employment.
Speaker, it bears repeating that the Auditor General found that we achieved the goals we set out to do. We kept Canadians safe, we made sure Canadians were paid quickly, and we averted significant social and economic hardship for our country. Mr. Speaker, this Parliament approved an attestation-based approach. We knew when we committed, we were very transparent from the beginning, we would do post-payment verification. We're methodically going through that, and we'll continue to do so, working individually with Canadians to make sure a fair and equitable response to this.
For Calgary, Forest Lawn.
Well, if the Liberals' goals were to lack transparency, lack accountability, and lack control, the Auditor General confirmed that in her report today. Their legacy of mismanagement has made life more unaffordable, sending more Canadians to food banks than ever before. Record high food, rent, and mortgage costs are driven up by the Liberals' inflation. The more Liberals fail, the more Canadians have to pay. How many more Liberal failures are Canadians on the hook for?
The Honourable Minister of Families.
Mr. Speaker, we took important action when we understood that the high cost of living was having an impact on Canadians. And in fact, yesterday, Mr. Speaker, the Financial Post noted that our childcare policy has been a success. They said government policy has played a role in getting women back in the workforce, especially when it comes to childcare. Women feel confident going back into the workforce because they won't be spending their whole paycheck on childcare. Mr. Speaker, we are there for Canadians and we are delivering. Thank you.
Mr. Speaker, the government will blame everyone else for their inflationary spending, but when the Auditor General confirms that a minimum of $32 billion in COVID overpayments and suspicious payments need more investigation, there is little argument that this mess added to inflation. The Auditor General has sounded the alarm bells on the lack of control on COVID spending. So lots of checks and no balances. And the government is continuing the same approach with current legislation, current programming. So I have one question. How can Canadians trust them?
The Honourable Minister of Tourism.
Mr. Speaker, I will get to the honourable member's question in a moment. I want to add my voice to those started by the Minister of Women and Gender Equality in this House today on the 33rd anniversary of École Polytechnique. I was a 19-year-old student at the U of A when word got to us about 14 women gunned down at École Polytechnique, and it became worse when we realized that this was motivated by hate and misogyny. We must do everything in this House to protect women and to end violence against women. And on the substantive question that the honourable colleague asked, millions of mothers who receive CERB benefits did not cause inflation. and neither did the benefits, neither did the businesses who took supports so they could keep their doors open.
Well, member for Thornhill.
Mr. Speaker, we're not talking about those cases. Canadians deserve transparency about the $32 billion that the Auditor General says is just the tip of the iceberg of people who got money and it needs to be investigated. So Canadians deserve to know that there was no control when the money was going out, and now they learn that there's no control or accountability for taxpayers to get that money back. So when food bank use is at its highest rate and 1 in 5 Canadians are skipping meals, I'll ask again, how do Canadians trust them?
L'honorable ministre de Revenus.
Monsieur le Président, l'agence n'est
Mr. Speaker, the CRA does not agree with the Auditor General's calculation with regard to ineligible recipients to the wage subsidies. The CRA's calculations indicate that the people were highly compliant and that the Auditor General's figures were exaggerated. It's not her fault because we all know that she was pressed by the opposition to produce this report. Political games must not lead us to forget that the wage subsidy saved the economy and many people. The honourable member for Chicoutimi-Le-Fjord. Mr. Speaker, according to a new report published yesterday, grocery costs are going to continue to rise in 2023. So annual spending for the average family is going to go up to $16,300, which is an enormous share of the family budget. Parents are already incapable of feeding their families, and now it's going to get worse. For Canadians, these price hikes are unaffordable. Can you believe it? In Canada, people can't afford to put food on their table or heat their homes. Will the Liberals pledge to stop their inflationary spending so that Canadians can afford to eat? The Honourable Minister. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The difference between us and the Conservatives is that on this side of the House, we trust Canadians. We understand what Canadians need, and we're going to help them out either by giving them dental benefits or with daycare assistance. We trust Canadians, and we're going to be there to support them today and in future. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Honourable Member for Chicoutimi-Le-Fjord. I can't believe that the member across the way gave us that kind of answer when we know that they're the ones who have lost control of public spending. The Auditor General confirmed that the government wasted $32 billion in payments to ineligible recipients. People don't have any money. They're charging their groceries, and Liberals are wasting billions of dollars. So once again, will the Liberals show some compassion and cancel their tax hikes? The Honourable Minister. Mr. Speaker, this is based on compassion and fiscal prudence. That's our response. If we look at the facts, millions of mothers who received CERB, they're not the ones who created inflation. Thousands of businesses who took wage subsidies, they're not the ones who created inflation either. Mr. Speaker, if the Conservatives really want to help Canadians weather this difficult time, then they should do the right thing and vote for C-32, which is going to help Canadians.